The year is 1500. The world stands at a strange, shimmering crossroads, a moment poised between the old and the new. It is a year when maps are being redrawn, ships are carving white trails into oceans once thought endless, and ancient empires watch the horizon with wary eyes. Gunpowder now hums beneath the surface of diplomacy. Faith and reason share uneasy space in the minds of men. And across continents, ordinary people rise each dawn with the same desires: to live, to love, to endure, and to dream of something beyond their reach. Yet no one knows that their quiet lives will become threads in a vast tapestry of transformation. In this single turning year, 1500, the world's great stories overlap like ripples on still water. To the east, the Ming dynasty rules a civilization of invention and ritual. In its heart, the forbidden city gleams like a vision of eternity, yet its people whisper of fading glory. To the west, Europe hums with curiosity and ambition. Explorers sail toward worlds they cannot yet imagine, and artists paint angels with human faces. The Islamic empires stretch proudly across trade routes that pulse with silk, spices, and secrets. In Africa, kingdoms flourish. Benin's bronzes shine beneath the equatorial sun, and Mali's griots still sing the lineage of kings. In the Americas, empires breathe in rhythm with the earth. The Aztecs raise their temples toward the stars, the Inca carve the Andes into stone and soul, and far in the Pacific, islanders navigate by stars older than memory. This is a world before the machine, before electricity, before the printed word has fully conquered the mind. It is a world lit by firelight, moved by wind and will, filled with the scent of wood smoke and wet earth. And yet, everywhere, humanity hums with quiet purpose. The hum of life in 1500 is not so different from our own. So tonight, we travel through a single day, seen through the eyes of many, not kings or conquerors, but people who lived quietly beneath the turning sky. Their stories will take us from the heart of Ming China to the jungles of Brazil, from Istanbul's call to prayer to the cold winds of the Andes. Each lives one day in the same world, the year 1500, unaware that the world itself is about to change forever. Welcome to History for Sleep, where the past drifts softly into dreams. Do not forget to write out in the comments where you are listening from. I'd love to know in which places around the world I am helping people sleep even more soundly. Plus, if you like what I do here, subscribe now and let tomorrow's dream begin where this one ends. Chapter 1. Li Wei, scholar of the Ming Dynasty, Beijing, China. The first light of dawn creeps through the latticed window of Li Wei's small study, painting the floor in patterns of gold and shadow. He has not slept much. The air is cool, early spring in Beijing, and a faint mist clings to the red-tiled rooftops beyond the city wall. Li Wei, son of a minor merchant, is 27 years old, a scholar waiting anxiously for the imperial exam results. For years, he has studied the analects, the histories, and the 1,000 measured characters that could raise a man from obscurity to power. The empire prizes knowledge above blood, or so they say, and the civil service exams are the ladder all men dream of climbing. But today, his mind is restless. He rises, lights a stick of incense, and bows 3 times before the small shrine that holds his ancestors' tablets. His father's name glows faintly in the candlelight, carved in red ink on polished wood. "Guide my hand, father," he whispers. "Let my brush be steady when fortune comes." Outside, Beijing is stirring. The city has swollen to 1,000,000 souls. Merchants, soldiers, poets, beggars, all moving through the streets like water through a channel. The bells from the Temple of Heaven ring out in the distance, deep and solemn. The smell of morning rice and steamed buns drifts from a nearby courtyard. Li Wei walks through the southern gate toward his teacher's house. He carries a roll of bamboo paper wrapped in silk, his best composition, written in fine, even calligraphy. He is proud of it. It speaks of virtue, balance, and the duties of a ruler to his people. But pride in this world must always bow before humility. He stops at a tea stall. The owner, an old man with silver hair, smiles and pours him a cup. "You scholars," the man says, "you carry the empire on your backs, but you still forget to eat." Li Wei laughs softly. "Without tea, even wisdom is dry." The man chuckles, eyes crinkling. "Perhaps, but tea cannot buy a title." They share a quiet moment as the city comes alive. Carts rolling, children shouting, the rhythmic clack of cobblestones beneath horses' hooves. Everywhere, the pulse of the Middle Kingdom beats strong. Yet beneath it, change stirs. In the harbor of Quanzhou, Portuguese ships have been sighted. Their sails are unlike any seen before. Thick, pale, like wings of foreign birds. Rumors reach even Beijing, Western traders, men with strange tongues hungry for silk and porcelain. Li Wei knows little of them, but their presence feels like a tremor beneath the calm order of Confucian life. At his teacher's house, he kneels in greeting. The old scholar, Master Zhang, regards him with weary eyes. "Li Wei," he says, "if heaven favors you, tomorrow you will be named among the chosen." "And if heaven does not?" Li Wei asks. The master pours tea, steam curling like smoke between them. "Then you will still write, still think, still honor your ancestors. The empire is large enough for both success and failure." Li Wei bows deeply. "Then I will live as if every word still matters." By nightfall, he returns home, walking past the imperial palace walls. Lanterns glow red, their reflections flickering on the water of the moat. Inside those walls, the emperor himself, Zhu Yucheng, the Hongji emperor, rules with quiet restraint. Peace reigns, trade flourishes, and the bureaucracy hums like a great machine. And yet, as Li Wei gazes at the glowing walls, he cannot shake a strange thought, that the world outside China is awakening, that beyond the walls of the forbidden city, something vast and unknown is approaching. He sighs, returns home, and dips his brush into ink. The night stretches long before him, filled with the scent of tea and hope. His words will not change the world, not yet, but they are part of its heartbeat. Chapter 2. Amina al-Fayez, weaver of Istanbul, Ottoman Empire. The call to prayer drifts softly over the city, echoing from the minarets of the Suleimanai hills. Morning mist rises from the Bosporus like breath. Seagulls cry overhead and the city stirs, the beating heart of the Ottoman Empire. Amina al-Fayez wakes before dawn, her hands already aching from yesterday's weaving. The loom stands in the corner, silent but waiting, its wooden frame worn smooth by years of work. She is 22, daughter of a silk merchant from Bursa, now living in Istanbul, where her husband serves as a guard in the Sultan's court. The year is 1500, and Sultan Bayezid II sits on the throne, a ruler of patience and poetry, more scholar than soldier. The empire stretches from the Danube to Damascus, from the sands of Egypt to the gates of Persia. It is an age of confidence, art, and quiet power. But for Amina, life is measured not in borders, but in threads. She lights a small oil lamp and begins her morning prayer. The rhythm of her words blends with the soft creak of the loom as she starts her work. Each thread is drawn with precision, crimson, gold, indigo, forming the pattern of a tulip that blossoms beneath her hands. Her cloths are destined for the Topkapi Palace. Nobles and viziers will run their fingers across them, unaware of the hands that wove each intricate knot. Outside, the streets hum with life. Spice sellers open their stalls, the air thick with cinnamon and rose. Children chase one another through narrow alleys. From across the water, the faint echo of a ship's horn announces the arrival of goods from Alexandria: coffee, glass, ivory, and tales. By midday, Amina walks to the market with her friend Layla. They pass men debating in Persian, Greeks selling fish, Armenians hawking jewelry, a city of 1,000 tongues. At every turn, Istanbul feels like the center of the world. But in the shadows, rumors murmur of Europeans sailing new routes, of new worlds across the sea. The Portuguese have rounded Africa. The Spanish speak of islands rich in gold. Amina listens but cannot imagine such places. For her, the world ends at the horizon, where the Bosporus meets the sky. At the market, a man sells small sheets of paper, books printed in strange Latin letters. The empire has yet to fully embrace this invention, and Amina frowns at their roughness. Will these replace the scribes? She asks Layla. Perhaps, her friend says, or perhaps stories cannot be bound so easily. They laugh softly, their veils fluttering in the breeze. That evening, as she returns home, Amina passes a group of scholars under the lanterns of a courtyard, reciting poetry by Rumi. Their voices rise in unison. The wound is where the light enters you. Amina stops for a moment, eyes closed, letting the words wash over her. She thinks of her loom, the tiny imperfections, the threads that snap and must be rejoined. She wonders if the world itself is being rewoven, quietly, thread by thread. As night deepens, the call to prayer rises again, soft and haunting. Amina lights her lamp once more and returns to her weaving, each thread a prayer, each pattern a memory. Outside, the empire glows under a crescent moon, and the world keeps turning. Chapter 3. Oba's Artisan, Idawu of Benin. Kingdom of Benin, West Africa. The morning sun spills across the walls of Benin City, turning the bronze plaques to fire. Their surfaces gleam, kings and warriors cast in perfect form, frozen in eternal ceremony. It is the year 1500, and Benin, in what is now southern Nigeria, stands at the height of its glory. Its moats and earthworks stretch for miles. Its palaces glimmer with carved ivory and red earth. Idawu is already awake when the first drum of the day sounds from the Oba's palace. His hands are blackened with soot and copper dust, his fingernails lined with clay. He is a brass caster, trained in the guild of Igun Eronwan, a lineage that serves the Oba himself, the divine king. He steps from his small hut into the courtyard, where the forge waits like a sleeping beast. Beside him, his apprentice fans the coals, and the air fills with the dry scent of burning wood and metal. In the stillness before the heat rises, Idawu closes his eyes and murmurs a prayer to Ogun, god of iron and craft. Let my hands remember, he whispers, and let my fire speak the truth. The wax model lies before him, the face of a warrior, carved with care, lips firm, eyes proud. Soon it will be melted away, replaced by molten bronze, cast in perfect reflection. This morning's work is for the Oba himself, a plaque to honor a great victory. Only a few months earlier, the Portuguese traders had returned to the coast, bringing fine cloth, beads, mirrors, and the iron that makes Idawu's craft possible. In exchange, they demand pepper, ivory, and sometimes slaves. The elders debate whether this trade is fair or dangerous. But for now, Benin's wealth grows, and the Oba's palace shines. By midday, the heat is fierce. Idawu's apprentice pours the molten bronze with trembling hands, sweat beading on his brow. The hiss of metal meeting mold fills the air. Time slows, every breath measured, every movement sacred. When the mold cools and the clay shell is broken, the warrior's face emerges, serene and eternal, bronze catching the light like a living soul. Idawu breathes out in relief. His heart swells with pride. This will hang in the royal court among hundreds of others, each telling the story of kings. At sunset, drums echo through the streets. A procession begins. The Oba rides forth, adorned in coral beads that shimmer like blood in the dusk. The crowd bows as he passes, heads lowered. Behind him, musicians beat wooden gongs, and the city thrums with rhythm. Idawu stands at the edge of the street, silent. The Oba's gaze never meets his, but he feels seen, part of something vast and divine. The empire is strong. The earth itself seems steady. Yet far beyond the coast, ships move like dark omens across the Atlantic. They will not reach Benin's heart for generations, but their shadow has already begun to stretch. That night, Idawu sits by his forge, watching the last coals fade to ash. His fingers ache, but his soul is at peace. He does not know it, but his work will outlive empires. One day, long after the walls of Benin fall, his bronzes will stand in silent museums, their gaze unbroken, their story whispering through time. Chapter 4. Cusi the Chasqui, messenger of the Inca Andes Mountains, South America. The wind screams through the Andes like a living thing. Thin air, sharp as glass, slices across the high paths carved into the mountainside. Far below, clouds drift like pale rivers. Cusi runs. He is a Chasqui, one of the swift-footed messengers of the Inca Empire, carrying words across a land that touches the sky. The year is 1500, and from Quito in the north to Cusco in the south, the empire stretches across deserts, jungles, and mountains. More than 4,000 kilometers of stone road and silence. Cusi's feet are calloused, his lungs strong from a lifetime above the clouds. A woven pouch hangs at his chest. Inside, a knotted string of quipu, the coded chords that hold messages for the Sapa Inca himself. Each knot, each color, speaks a language of its own. He runs through dawn, the first light spilling over snow peaks. At the relay post ahead, another Chasqui waits, crouched beside a small fire. The two lock eyes, no words exchanged. Cusi slows, thrusts the pouch into the man's hands, and collapses onto a stone bench, chest heaving. Within seconds, the next runner vanishes down the path, the empire's pulse continuing unbroken. As he rests, Cusi eats a handful of toasted maize and coca leaves. His thoughts drift to his village, high above the sacred valley, where his mother tends llamas and his younger sister weaves bright blankets. Life is simple there, terraces of corn that rise like stairs into the clouds, festivals that paint the air with flute music and drums. But beyond the mountains, strange rumors travel. Men with beards and armor of metal, crossing the seas in floating houses. The priests say the gods will decide whether they are omen or opportunity. Cusi shakes off the thought. His duty is to run, not to dream. By afternoon, he carries a new quipu. This one a report of tribute, gold, maize, and textiles to be delivered to Cusco before the next moon. The empire's order depends on such messages. Its heart beats through runners like him. As he descends toward the next valley, the air warms. Villages appear along the path. Stone huts with thatched roofs, women pounding maize, children chasing alpacas. A priest offers him chicha, a fermented drink of corn. He drinks gratefully, wipes his mouth, and keeps running. By nightfall, he reaches a tambo, a roadside inn built for messengers. There, he sleeps beside the fire, wrapped in a llama wool blanket, listening to the wind rattle the thatch above. He dreams of the city he will never see. Cusco, navel of the world, where gold walls glow under the temple of Inti, the sun god. In his dream, he stands before the Sapa Inca, who tells him even the smallest runner carries the sun across the world. When Kuzi wakes, dawn has already touched the peaks. He smiles, shoulders his pouch, and begins to run again, down the endless road of stone through a world not yet touched by conquest, still whole, still dreaming. Chapter 5. Matteo di Rossi, apprentice in Florence, Renaissance Italy. The morning light spills through the narrow windows of the workshop, streaking the air with dust and gold. The smell of pigment, oil, and wood smoke clings to the stones. It is Florence, the year 1500, a city alive with whispers of genius. Matteo di Rossi is 16, an apprentice to a painter whose name will never appear in the histories. He wakes before dawn, sweeping the studio's floor, grinding pigments, stretching canvases. His master, old Maestro Lorenzo, once studied under men who knew Leonardo da Vinci, though Matteo has never seen such brilliance himself. Still, he dreams that one day his own hands might bring light to life on a wall. The world beyond Florence trembles with change. In Rome, Michelangelo chisels marble that seems to breathe. In Venice, Titian is beginning to paint color like fire. But here, in this narrow street by the Arno, life is quieter. The hum of carts on cobblestones, the cries of bread sellers, the tolling bells of Santa Maria del Fiore. Matteo's task today is delicate, to mix ultramarine, the pigment made from lapis lazuli, more precious than gold. He grinds the blue stone with oil until it gleams like the sky. Lorenzo nods approvingly. Good, the master says. Color is truth, Matteo. It must live even when the light dies. At midday, the city bursts into motion. Merchants haggle, monks preach, children chase pigeons through the square. In a nearby tavern, men speak in excited tones of Columbus's voyages and new lands across the ocean. Lands full of gold and souls, yet unsaved. Matteo listens in silence, torn between wonder and fear. To him, the idea of a new world feels as impossible as painting the wind. That evening, he follows his master to a church, where a new fresco is being unveiled, a scene of the Virgin bathed in light so real it seems divine. The crowd murmurs. Matteo's chest tightens. He feels both awe and envy. This, he thinks, is what it means to leave something eternal behind. On their walk home, the maestro says quietly, "We paint because time forgets, but paint remembers." Matteo nods, though he does not fully understand. He will one day, when his own hands are wrinkled and his colors faded. But tonight, he feels only the thrill of creation and the ache of endless practice. The stars glimmer above Florence. Somewhere, Leonardo sketches a flying machine. Somewhere, the future waits. Matteo dips his brush into the last of the ultramarine and dreams in blue. Chapter 6. Citlali of Tenochtitlan, daughter of the lake Aztec Empire. Morning rises over Lake Texcoco, and the city of Tenochtitlan awakens like a living jewel. Canals glisten, causeways stretch into the mist, and the great temples glow red under the newborn sun. It is the year 1500, and the Aztec Empire stands at its height, proud, rich, and restless beneath the shadow of its gods. Citlali is 17, daughter of a feather artisan, whose hands craft cloaks for nobles and priests. Her own hands are nimble. She strings quetzal feathers into patterns of green and gold, creating beauty that floats like air. But today her mind drifts. The festival of Huitzilopochtli, god of the sun and war, begins at noon, and her brother, Tlacelel, will march in the procession. Outside, the streets fill with life. Women sweep their courtyards with bundles of reeds. Traders from far provinces display cacao beans, obsidian, and jaguar pelts. The air smells of maize and burning copal incense. Priests in crimson robes move like spirits through the crowd. Sitlali carries her work to the market by canoe, gliding through narrow canals where flowers bloom on floating gardens, chinampas, built from mud and reeds, each one a miracle of human patience. The city hums with balance, order, and devotion. It is a world that believes the sun must be fed with blood to rise again. At the market she meets a stranger, a man from the coast, wearing shells and a cloak dyed deep blue. He sells cocoa and salt, but he speaks of strange ships seen far on the eastern horizon, great birds with white wings, he says, carrying men with shining faces. The people laugh nervously, thinking it a tale meant to draw attention. But Sitlali feels a chill she cannot name. By afternoon, the drums begin. The festival consumes the city. Flutes, chants, dancers adorned with feathers. Tlaslel appears among them, proud and solemn, his face painted red. Sitlali watches, pride mixed with dread, as the priests climb the steps of the great temple to offer their prayers to the sky. From the top of the temple, the city spreads like a dream. Endless canals, shimmering waters, mountains guarding the horizon. Sitlali imagines it will last forever. That night, after the fires die, she walks along the causeway, staring at her reflection in the black water. The stars ripple, distorted. Somewhere beyond the sea, sails are rising. The world she knows still breathes, still sings, still glows, like a living heart, unaware that the dawn now belongs to history. Chapter 7. Asha bint Yusuf, merchant of the Swahili coast, Mombasa, East Africa. Dawn breaks over the Indian Ocean in ripples of silver and rose. The call to prayer drifts softly across the rooftops of Mombasa, mingling with the cries of gulls and the scent of salt and spice. Asha bint Yusuf wraps a light veil around her hair and steps onto the balcony of her coral stone house. Below, the harbor stirs, dhows with their triangular sails lean toward the wind, and men call to one another in a dozen tongues. It is the year 1500, and the Swahili coast hums with life. Traders from Arabia, Gujarat, and Africa mingle in a world where gold, ivory, and stories all hold equal value. Her family are merchants, not rich but respected. Her father's dhow, Al-Baraka, returned last month from Aden, its hull heavy with glass beads and indigo cloth. Asha manages the household accounts, for her father's eyesight is fading. Her hands move with quiet precision over her wax tablets, tallying goods and payments. She can read and write Arabic, a rare skill, and sometimes she wonders if the merchants who sailed to these shores think women here are invisible. She smiles at that. The coast runs on the labor of unseen hands. The streets outside her home smell of coconut oil, cardamom, and drying fish. Children chase goats through sandy alleys. A group of sailors argue over coral blocks for a new mosque. The sea wind carries faint music from the Portuguese caravels anchored beyond the reef, foreign ships with crosses on their sails. They arrived only months ago, led by Vasco da Gama, whose fleet had passed these waters like an omen. Some say they come to trade, others whisper they bring conquest. But this morning Asha chooses not to think of them. The world, she decides, will change whether or not she worries. She walks through the market, where merchants sit cross-legged among heaps of spices and ivory tusks. A man from Kilwa greets her warmly, bowing his head. "Habariya asubuhi," he says. "Good morning." She answers in kind, the rhythm of Swahili rolling like waves between them, a language shaped by many shores, Arabic, Persian, Bantu, and Indian. At her stall, she unwraps bundles of fabric: cotton from Gujarat, silk from Yemen, raffia from the hinterlands. Her customers are women from every walk of life: fishermen's wives, noble daughters, widows who barter with wit sharper than any sword. Here, the market is their kingdom. At sunset, Asha climbs to the roof to watch the light fade over the water. The horizon glows, and the wind carries the scent of rain. She hears the evening call to prayer, soft and familiar. Her younger brother joins her, pointing toward the distant sails of the Europeans. "Do you think they'll come here?" he asks. She gazes at the sea where gold fades to violet. "They're already here," she says quietly. "The world has always come to us. We just forget to notice." When night falls, she writes a line of poetry in her ledger margin, her small rebellion against the silence history will give her. The tide returns, the stars remain, and we trade what time cannot keep. The lantern flickers, the waves murmur below. Mombasa sleeps and the ocean dreams of empires. Chapter 8. Hiroshi of Kai, retainer of the warring states. Japan Sengoku period. The bamboo groves whisper before dawn. A cold mist drapes the valley like a shroud. In the foothills of Kai province, a young samurai named Hiroshi kneels in silence, blade resting across his knees. The year is 1500. Japan is fractured. The Sengoku Jidai, the age of warring states. Daimyo warlords rise and fall like tides. Loyalty is a currency spent and reclaimed with blood. Hiroshi serves the Takeda clan, still small but ambitious, their banners marked with red diamonds fluttering above the mountain fortress of Kofu. He is 25, born to no title, raised on discipline and duty. The scent of pine and cold iron fills his lungs as he breathes the morning air. Below the fortress, farmers tend their rice paddies, unaware that the peace of their valley rests on the edge of his sword. Today, Hiroshi must ride with his commander to inspect the borders. Rumors whisper of neighboring lords gathering men, of alliances forged in secret. But he feels no fear, only the familiar stillness of resolve. He ties his armor strings with practiced grace, the lacquered plates clicking softly in the quiet. His horse, a mottled gray mare, stamps impatiently as he mounts. Together they ride through the mist, past shrines hung with prayer paper, past fields glistening with dew. At a crossroads, he pauses to let a procession pass. Monks carrying relics from Kyoto, now a city faded by war. One of the monks meets his eyes and nods. "All things return to silence," the monk murmurs. By midday, Hiroshi and his commander stand on a ridge overlooking the valley. The land below rolls out in patterns of green and smoke, villages, rivers, distant fires. The commander, Lord Nobuharu, speaks quietly. "Peace is an illusion," he says. "But honor is not. Remember that, Hiroshi." The words stay with him through the day's long ride. That evening, as they return to camp, Hiroshi sees a group of children playing with wooden swords near the fields. He dismounts and watches. Their laughter pierces the gloom, and for a fleeting moment, he imagines a world without clans, without war, only the sound of bamboo and the promise of rain. Night falls. The campfire crackles. Warriors drink rice wine and trade stories of past battles. Hiroshi sits apart, sharpening his blade under the stars. He runs a finger along the edge and thinks of his father, a farmer slain in a skirmish years ago, another name lost in the chaos of the age. "All things return to silence," he whispers to himself, repeating the monk's words. The next morning he will ride again, perhaps to battle, perhaps to peace. But for this night, he lets the world be still. The wind rustles the pines. A temple bell rings far off, mournful and pure. And Hiroshi, loyal retainer, guardian of a fleeting peace, closes his eyes, another life, another thread in the tapestry of 1,500. Chapter 9. Duarte da Silva, sailor of the edge Atlantic Ocean aboard the São Jorge. The sea breathes like a living thing, deep, dark, endless. It is dawn in the year 1500. The São Jorge, a Portuguese carrack, creaks under a bruised sky, sails heavy with dew. Duarte da Silva, a sailor from Porto, leans against the railing, staring into the mist. He has not seen land for weeks. Salt crusts his beard. His hands are thick with rope burns. Yet he smiles, the smile of a man who has outlived storms. He is 28, and like most aboard he cannot read, but he knows the sea's moods better than his own heart. When the winds shift, he feels it in his bones. When the stars vanish, he listens to the waves instead. Tonight the ocean is calm, but something in the wind tastes strange, sweet, warm, like fruit carried on invisible currents. They are sailing under Pedro Alvarez Cabral, following a new route to India, seeking the spice ports of the east. But the wind has turned them west, too far west. The helmsman curses softly, but Cabral says nothing. The horizon glows faintly gold. Land, someone whispers. By noon the mist breaks. A coastline unfolds like a dream. Green hills, tall palms, bright rivers snaking to the sea. The men shout, laugh, fall to their knees. Some pray, others simply stare. Duarte cannot speak. He feels the world widen inside him. They drop anchor near a wide bay. Natives gather on the beach, watching. Their skin gleams like bronze. Their ornaments flash in the sun. Duarte feels both awe and unease, as if he has seen a mirror of himself, turned inside out. The priests chant. A cross is raised in the sand. The captain proclaims the land belongs to Portugal, though it already belongs to itself. Duarte wonders what the people on shore think, what they whisper to one another in their tongue of wind and water. That night, as the men feast on dried fish and wine, Duarte slips away to the deck. The sea shimmers under a sky full of new stars. He thinks of his wife in Porto, her hands smelling of olive oil and bread. He thinks of how the maps will change, how the world itself is shifting beneath their feet. Perhaps, he murmurs, God's ocean has no end, only doors. The wind answers softly, carrying the scent of new earth. Chapter 10. Arani, daughter of the forest, Tupinamba village, Brazil. The sun rises warm and golden over the coast, painting the leaves with fire. Arani wakes to birdsong and the hum of the forest. She is 19, daughter of the Tupinamba people who live between the forest and the sea. Her world is green and alive. The rhythm of rivers, the whisper of trees, the laughter of her kin. She carries a woven basket to the shore, her bare feet silent on the sand. The morning smells of salt and guava. Behind her the village stirs, smoke from cooking fires, the low murmur of voices, the steady pulse of drums used in greetings and farewells. Arani stops suddenly. Out on the horizon something gleams, white and vast, like wings on the water. At first she thinks it must be clouds, but then, slowly, they grow. Great wooden birds, their bellies swollen, their bodies scarred by wind. Her stomach tightens. Others gather beside her, eyes wide. No one speaks. By afternoon, the strangers come ashore. Their skin is pale as sand, their clothing heavy, their speech strange and sharp. They carry shining sticks of fire that smell of metal. The chief offers gifts, feathers, food, words of welcome, but the strangers only nod, smiling without understanding. Arani watches one man, a young sailor with sea-gray eyes. He stares at the land as though it is holy. She wonders if he fears them, or if he thinks they are the ones who do not belong. When the strangers raise a wooden cross on the beach, she feels a flicker of dread. The old shaman beside her murmurs a prayer to the spirits of sea and sky. That night, the forest hums restlessly. The elders speak in low tones. Some say the visitors are spirits. Others say they are men who have forgotten their gods. Arani sits beside the fire, staring into the flames. What will they take? She asks softly. No one answers. The next morning the ships are gone, leaving footprints in the sand, broken shells, and a sense that the wind itself has changed. The sky feels different, wider, uncertain. Arani walks to the water's edge, lets the waves lap at her ankles. She looks east, toward the place where the sea swallows the sun. If they can cross the great waters, she whispers, then the world is smaller than we believed, and heavier. She gathers her basket and turns toward the forest, the light shifting gold through the leaves. Life continues, hunting, planting, laughter. Yet a new silence hovers beneath it. The age of old balance has ended. The age of crossing has begun. Chapter 11. Fatima ibn Said, physician of Cairo, Mamluk Egypt. Morning drapes itself over Cairo like a shawl of gold and dust. The muezzin's call glides between domes and minarets, weaving through the smoke of the bakeries and the cries of early merchants. Fatima lifts her veil from its hook and opens the lattice shutters to let in the first light. The city awakens below, 1,000 rooftops, 1,000 prayers. She has lived here all her life, in a narrow street near the spice market. Her father was once a scholar at Al-Azhar, a quiet man who taught her to read when she was still a child. Now, at 29, she practices the art of tib, medicine, in a small clinic shaded by a fig tree. The air inside smells of camphor, mint, and ground myrrh. Shelves line the walls, jars of herbs, dried petals, powders of copper, and crushed pearls. A wooden chest holds manuscripts copied by her own hand, the teachings of Ibn Sina and Al-Razi, the verses that measure heat and cold, moisture and dryness, the humors that rule the body like hidden winds. Today's patients wait at her door before sunrise. An old man with a cough, a young mother whose child burns with fever, a merchant with pain in his joints. Fatima greets each with the same calm dignity, her voice low and measured. She listens more than she speaks. The heart, she says often, must be treated before the flesh. By mid-morning, the market outside roars alive. The smell of roasted sesame drifts through her window. From beyond the Nile, the faint clang of a smith's hammer echoes through the haze. Cairo in 1500 is the jewel of the Mamluk Sultanate, a crossroads of merchants and scholars. But lately, whispers of change drift along the trade routes, the Ottomans growing stronger to the north. Portuguese fleets sailing strange new paths around Africa. When she visits the apothecary that afternoon, she hears men arguing about these ships. They've reached the Red Sea, one says. Soon they'll bring their own spices and ruin us. Fatima says nothing. The world beyond the desert feels distant, like a mirage. Her own battles are smaller. The failing sight of an old patient, the price of rosewater, the ache in her own wrists from grinding mortar. As dusk falls, she climbs the stairs to her rooftop garden. The muezzin's evening call folds the city in stillness. Pigeons settle on the parapet. The Nile gleams bronze in the last light. She kneels beside a pot of jasmine, crushing a blossom between her fingers, the scent of her mother's hair when she was a child. Her apprentice joins her, carrying a notebook. "You said once," he begins shyly, "that every sickness has a mirror in the sky. What did you mean?" Fatima smiles. "The heavens are a book," she says, "and the body is another. To heal one, we must read both." They sit in silence, watching the stars ignite above Cairo's domes. Below, the city murmurs, prayers, laughter, bargaining. the eternal rhythm of life. Somewhere in the darkness, a caravan from Damascus enters the gates, another departs for Mecca. The world moves, the healer listens. When she returns indoors, she writes her notes by lamplight, fever lessened, appetite returning, praise be. Then she closes her book and whispers her own prayer, not for power, not for peace, but for wisdom to outlast the noise of time. Outside, the fig leaves rustle, and the night smells of mint and ink. Chapter 12. Oyun, herdswoman of the steppe Mongolia. The wind wakes her before dawn. It whistles through the felt seams of the gyre, carrying the sharp scent of frost and smoke. Oyun blinks into the half-light, pulls her sheepskin cloak tight, and steps outside. The steppe stretches in every direction, a silver sea of grass trembling beneath a violet sky. Far off, horses graze, their breath rising in small clouds. To the east, the first rim of sunlight touches the distant hills. Oyun is 23, daughter of herders and granddaughter of warriors. Her family belongs to no great clan now. The Mongol Empire is long gone, its banners faded to myth. But they still live by its rhythm, ride, graze, trade, move. The land is both home and teacher. She kneels beside the fire pit and stirs the embers back to life. The smell of milk and smoke fills the air as she boils tea with salt and butter. Her younger brother, Temur, emerges yawning, rubbing his eyes. Together they saddle the horses, their breath mixing in the cold. The herd waits beyond the ridge, hundreds of animals, their hides glistening with dew. They move them slowly toward better pasture, singing to keep the rhythm. The wind steals their voices, carrying them into eternity. By midday the sun is high. Oyun rests under the shadow of her mare, sharing dried cheese with her brother. They watch a caravan winding along the horizon, merchants bound for China or Samarkand, their camels strung like beads across the desert. Once, their great-grandfathers rode with such trains, guarding silk and silver for khans whose names the world still remembers. Temur points toward the distant figures. Do you think they know our names? Oyun smiles. The land remembers for us. At evening they return to camp, the sky burning with sunset. Their mother tends the fire, her face lined by wind and laughter. The family eats together, meat, tea, bread, then listens as the grandfather speaks of the old days when Genghis rode under the eternal blue sky, when the horses thundered like storms. The Khan's empire is gone, he says, but the sky remains. So long as we ride, we belong to it. Oyun looks up. The stars have spilled across the heavens in numbers too great to count. She feels suddenly small, yet infinite, part of something older than memory. Later, as the camp sleeps, she steps outside again. The wind has quieted. The grass glows faintly under the moon. In the distance, wolves call, and the horses answer with low murmurs. She kneels, presses her palm to the cold earth, and whispers a prayer not to any god, but to the world itself. Let us endure, she says. Let our children still know the taste of this wind. The silence answers like a heartbeat. Tomorrow they will move again, farther east, following the grass, the stars, and the old invisible road of their ancestors. Chapter 13. Rajan, stone carver of Vijayanagara, South India. The sun climbs slowly over the red hills of the Tungabhadra River, turning the stone temples of Vijayanagara, the color of embers. Drums echo faintly from the bazaar where merchants already unfurl bright cloths from Persia and China. The scent of tamarind, dust, and sandalwood thickens the air. Rajan wipes the sweat from his brow, squinting against the glare that gleams off the granite block before him. He has been shaping this stone for weeks, a panel of dancers meant for the outer wall of the Virupaksha temple. Each figure must appear alive, yet at peace. His chisel must find the breath inside the rock. His father taught him that the gods dwell in stone, waiting to be released. Strike too deep, his father said, and you own divinity. Rajan remembers that with every tap of his hammer. His hands are scarred, his fingertips calloused to leather, but the rhythm of his craft steadies his heart. Around him the temple complex hums with sound, carpenters, jewelers, priests chanting morning verses. The empire is at its height, its palaces gilded with copper domes, its granaries full, its streets lined with music and elephants. The Rayas, rulers of Vijayanagara, have made their capital a miracle of faith and order. By midday, the heat shimmers. Pilgrims press flowers to their foreheads, whispering prayers to Shiva and Parvati. Rajan pauses to drink from a brass cup of buttermilk, watching the crowd. Soldiers in silk turbans, women balancing baskets of mangoes, monks with shaved heads dusted in ash. Life feels eternal here, a rhythm set long before he was born. That afternoon, a royal messenger passes through the square, bearing tidings of skirmishes on the empire's northern border. Rajan listens without fear. Wars come and go, but stone endures. Still, a faint unease creeps through him. He has heard of the sultans beyond the mountains, of foreign traders with guns that speak thunder. The world beyond the city walls is changing. At sunset, the sculptors gather their tools and climb the steps of the temple. Rajan runs his hand over the cool granite pillar he finished years ago. A single lotus blooms there, carved so finely that dust settles like pollen in its folds. He smiles. "You will outlive me," he murmurs to it. When night falls, oil lamps bloom like constellations across the courtyards. The priests begin their evening rituals, bells ringing through the dark. Rajan sits by the riverbank, washing his hands in the slow current. Fireflies drift above the water. He feels small and at peace. Tomorrow he will rise again, pick up his chisel, and coax another god from the stone. The empire will hum, the river will flow, and the city of victory will dream on. Unaware that centuries later, its pillars will lie silent beneath vines and moonlight. Chapter 14. Ingrid Olafsdottir, fisher's wife of Bergen, Norway. The wind off the North Sea carries the scent of salt and herring. The year is 1500, and Bergen crouches between the grey mountains and the restless water, its wooden houses clinging to the harbour like birds against a cliff. Ingrid Olafsdottir wakes before dawn to the groan of timbers and the creak of ropes. Her husband, Leif, is already at the dock, loading the nets. She pulls her wool shawl tight, breath clouding in the cold, and follows him down the pier. The sea is dark as slate. Gulls wheel and scream above the masts. She helps him stow the barrels of salt, her fingers numb. "The wind's turning," she says quietly. Leif glances at the horizon, where a bruise of clouds gathers. "We'll be back before nightfall." He says it lightly, as he always does, but she sees the tightness in his jaw. When the boat pushes off, Ingrid stands on the pier until it fades into mist. Then she returns to the house, a small timber cottage smelling of tar and rye bread. She tends the fire, kneads dough, and hums an Old Norse lullaby her mother once sang. The rhythm of the sea beats faintly through the walls. By mid-morning, she walks to the market square, where the Hanseatic merchants haggle in Low German, their coin scales glinting in the thin light. She sells dried fish, trades for barley, and listens to the gossip that travels with the ships, rumors of new lands far west, of wars in the south, of priests speaking against Rome. The words wash over her like the tide. What matters is whether the weather holds. In the afternoon, the storm comes anyway. Rain lashes the rooftops. Waves pound the breakwater. Ingrid lights a candle at St. Mary's Church, whispering a prayer to the Virgin and to Ran, goddess of the drowned, for one can never be sure which listens faster. Hours pass. The wind screams down the fjord. She waits by the window, watching the lantern she hung above the door gutter and sway. Then, just as the last light fades, she hears a shout. Leif's boat appears out of the rain, battered but whole. He stumbles ashore, soaked to the bone, laughing through exhaustion. She runs to him, heart hammering. They speak little that night. They eat broth and sit by the fire, the storm still muttering beyond the walls. Leif tells her of a shoal of cod so thick it turned the sea silver, of a lightning bolt that struck the waves and left the smell of iron in the air. The world is wide, he says softly, but it still fits in the palm of your hand if you're holding the right one. Ingrid smiles, resting her head against his shoulder. The candlelight flickers over their faces. Outside, the rain softens, and the harbor begins to sleep. Tomorrow will be another day of nets, salt, and prayer, the endless rhythm that keeps the edge of the world alive. Chapter 15. Tenzin, novice of Lhasa, Tibet. The morning air is thin and blue, sharp enough to taste. Bells chime from the monastery terrace, echoing off the cliffs like waves of bronze. The city of Lhasa lies below, a patchwork of whitewashed walls, golden roofs, and smoke curling from butter lamps. Beyond it stretch the Himalayas, rising in silence, their peaks veiled in cloud. Tenzin, 15 years old, kneels on the cold stone floor of the temple courtyard. His breath clouds before him as he recites the morning sutras with 100 other novices. Their voices rise and fall like the rhythm of wind over snow. He feels the vibration in his chest more than he hears the words, a hum that seems to connect the mountains, the sky, and his small heart into one. When the chanting ends, he carries bowls of barley porridge to the older monks. The monastery smells of butter, incense, and damp wool. His teacher, the venerable Lama Norbu, gestures for him to sit. Tenzin, the Lama says softly, to learn patience, one must practice listening. The boy nods, eyes wide. Outside, prayer flags snap in the wind, their colors faded by sun and snow. He listens to the ravens croaking on the roof beams, to the distant roar of the river below, to the silence that follows each breath. Later, Tenzin climbs the path above the monastery to collect juniper branches for the altar. The air grows colder as he climbs, but the horizon widens. He can see far across the valley, tiny figures of pilgrims winding toward Lhasa, their prostrations marking devotion with every body length. He pauses, hands full of pine needles, and wonders what drives them to walk so far, to bow so low. Perhaps faith itself is the road, he thinks, and walking it is enough. By midday, clouds gather. Snow begins to fall in slow, drifting flakes. The world turns quiet, so quiet he can hear his own heartbeat. When he returns to the monastery, he finds the Lama gazing from the balcony. "Master," Tenzin asks, "is the world changing?" The old man smiles faintly. The world is always changing. Only compassion remains. That evening the monks light lamps along the corridors. The glow reflects off the gilded roof of the Yokang temple far below, where pilgrims spin prayer wheels in endless circles. Tenzin writes a verse in his small notebook, his first poem, though he doesn't yet call it that. The wind moves the prayer flag, but the mountain moves nothing. Perhaps both are prayers. He blows on the ink to dry it, closes his book, and watches the snow deepen outside. Somewhere beyond the mountains, wars rage, ships sail, empires dream. But here, in the cold, under the eternal sky, the only sound is the slow beat of the world learning to breathe. Chapter 16. Edda Vandermeer, printer's daughter of Antwerp, Low Countries. The presses begin before dawn. Metal type clatters, gears groan, the scent of ink fills the cellar. To Edda, it is the smell of thunder, the promise of change pressed into paper. Her father's workshop crouches in the maze of Antwerp's merchant quarter, between warehouses of spices and wool. Outside, carts rattle over cobblestones, carrying bales of linen to the port. Inside, the press devours blank sheets and births words. It is 1,500, and books multiply like spring weeds. Edda is 20, slender, quick, with ink stains on her fingers and the habit of reading aloud to herself as she works. Her father prints religious texts, calendars and pamphlets, anything that sells. But today she is typesetting a poem smuggled from Italy, written in a language she barely understands. The verses speak of light, reason, and the dignity of the mind. They make her chest tighten with an excitement she cannot name. "Mind the spacing," her father says, peering over her shoulder. A crooked line is a lie on the page. She nods, adjusting the type, the mirrored letters biting her fingertips. The press shudders, the wood creaks, and another page emerges. Perfect, clean, full of dangerous beauty. At noon, she steps outside for air. The river Scheldt glimmers under a grey sky. Sailors shout in Portuguese, German, and English. Antwerp is becoming the heart of Europe's trade, and its ideas. She buys bread from a stall and listens to the talk around her, stories of explorers returning from seas no map can hold, of scholars translating the stars, of priests warning that heresy hides in ink. In the evening, when the press is quiet, she helps hang the drying sheets from the rafters. Candlelight turns them golden. Each page flutters like a captured prayer. Her father sighs, rubbing his hands. "These machines will make the world noisy," he says. "Too many voices, too many truths." Edda smiles faintly. Then perhaps the world has been too silent. He looks at her for a long moment, then laughs, not unkindly. "You sound like a book we cannot afford to print." After supper, she stays behind, alone among the presses. She holds one of the pages up to the light and traces the words with her finger. Outside, a church bell tolls the hour. She thinks of how easily truth can be folded, hidden, carried. A sheet of paper lighter than breath, yet powerful enough to change kingdoms. She tucks the poem into her sleeve and steps into the night. The streets smell of rain and wine, the air alive with distant voices. Merchants, lovers, preachers, dreamers. The city feels enormous, yet she walks through it with purpose. In her heart, she carries the faint vibration of the press, that steady, relentless heartbeat of a new world being printed one page at a time. Chapter 17. Yahya bin Abdullah, astronomer of Samarkand, Central Asia. Night has no darkness here, only layers of blue and silence. Under the vast bowl of the transoxianan sky, Yahya bin Abdullah adjusts a brass astrolabe on the roof of the old observatory. The air smells of copper and desert dust. Every sound feels distant, as if the earth itself were holding its breath. He is 42, thin as a reed, his beard touched with grey. By day he teaches arithmetic to merchant sons in the bazaar. By night he maps the heavens for no patron but his own restlessness. Below him stretches Samarkand, its turquoise domes gleaming faintly even in starlight. Once it was the capital of Timur's empire, the crossroad of scholars and silk. Now it drifts in quiet decline, but its libraries still breathe. Yahya peers through a sighting tube, aligning the brass arm to Altair. He whispers numbers to himself, noting the angle, the hour, the month. His ink-stained ledger already holds years of such marks, a slow conversation with the sky. From the courtyard below comes the scent of roasting lamb and the faint laughter of students. They debate whether the earth moves around the sun, a rumor carried by merchants from Venice. Yahya listens without interrupting. The idea is dangerous, but he cannot help the small thrill it stirs in him. He remembers his teacher's words, "The heavens are perfect, but our eyes are not." He wonders if the same could be said of faith. Near midnight, a dust wind rises. He folds his robes tighter and gazes east, where constellations shimmer over the desert. The Milky Way looks like spilled sugar. Somewhere beyond those dunes lies China. Beyond that, the endless ocean that now bears European sails. The world he measures nightly is the same one being crossed by men he will never meet. When dawn seeps pink across the domes, he closes his notebook. The call to prayer ripples through the sleeping city, answered by 100 minarets. He kneels on the rooftop stones, forehead to the cold earth. "O Lord," he murmurs, "you made the stars so we might learn patience." Then he rises, brushing dust from his robe, and smiles to himself. For tonight he has measured not the sky, but his place beneath it. Chapter 18. Anacona, Poet Queen of Saragua, Hispaniola, Caribbean. The drums begin before sunrise, a low heartbeat echoing through the valley of Zaragua. Mist curls from the forest, parrots flash green fire between the trees. Anacona, golden flower, stands on the wooden terrace of her palace and listens. The rhythm steadies her. Today she must welcome the strangers again. She is 35, tall, proud, her hair woven with shells and gold beads. She rules her people with a poet's tongue, songs instead of swords, generosity instead of fear. Under her guidance the land has flourished, gardens heavy with cassava, rivers clear as mirrors, children laughing among maize stalks. Yet the peace feels brittle. Ever since the first Spanish ships appeared years ago, bringing men in shining skins and fire that spoke thunder, the world has felt unbalanced. They come with gifts, bells, mirrors, scarlet cloth, and leave with demands. She has learned their language enough to speak carefully, but their eyes wander past her words toward the gold worn by her priests. As the sun climbs, the delegation arrives, armored men led by a governor with a trimmed beard and a smile too sharp. Behind him, friars clutch crosses and mutter prayers. Anacona meets them barefoot, wearing a mantle of woven feathers. She offers cassava bread and fruit. They nod, though she can tell they do not see her hospitality as equal to their own. The translator speaks of peace, of alliance with the crown of Castile, of friendship under God. She answers with grace, her voice smooth as river water. "We already live under the sun," she says. "Your God must be a neighbor then." The Spaniard laughs politely, not understanding the warning beneath her courtesy. That evening a feast fills the square. Torches sway, dancers whirl in circles, songs rise like sparks into the dark. Anacona sits beside the governor, watching his men stare at her people as if measuring them. She feels the weight of every gaze, the quiet hunger behind the smile. Later, alone in her hut, she writes verses in her own tongue on a strip of bark. The sea brings gifts and takes them back. Even the moon has two faces. She hides the poem beneath a carved idol of Atabi, goddess of the earth. Outside, the waves crash against the reefs, a sound older than kings. When dawn returns, the ships have gone, leaving ruts in the sand and a hollow silence. The parrots still cry, the river still runs, yet something invisible has shifted. She stands by the shore, the surf tugging at her ankles, and whispers to the horizon, "May our songs remember what the wind will forget." Behind her, The forest answers with the steady murmur of leaves, as if promising to keep her words until the world is ready to listen. Chapter 19. Thomas Green, farmer of Kent, England. Rain falls in slow, steady threads over the fields of Kent. It darkens the soil until it shines like polished coal, fills the furrows between rows of winter wheat, and drums against the thatch of Thomas Green's cottage. He wakes before dawn, as he always does, when the light is only a grey whisper through the shutters. The fire has burned low. His wife, Marjorie, still sleeps, the youngest child curled against her. Thomas moves quietly so as not to wake them, pulls on his wool coat, and steps into the damp morning. The smell of wet earth and straw greets him like an old companion. He checks the oxen first, 2 patient beasts chewing their cud under a lean-to. The world is small here, a few acres leased from the local lord, bounded by hedgerows and superstition. Yet in the taverns men speak of storms far beyond, of princes scheming in London, of the Tudor king raising new taxes, of sailors claiming islands across the western sea. Thomas listens, nods, but such tales feel as distant as the moon. Today his concern is the field by the stream. The plough sank there yesterday, the wheel caught in clay. He works the mud loose, grunting, shoulders burning. When the sun breaks briefly through the clouds, he straightens, breath steaming, and watches the lights spill over the valley. The green is richer than any jewel. At midday, Marjorie brings him bread and cheese wrapped in cloth. They eat beneath a hawthorn tree, sharing few words. The silence between them is comfortable. Years of labor have turned speech into glances. "The weather's turning kinder," she says. He nods. "Aye, if it holds, we'll have a good harvest." In the afternoon, a friar passes along the lane, his robes soaked to the knees. He speaks of a German monk challenging the church's indulgences. "The world is changing," the friar mutters. Thomas smiles faintly. The world always changes. The soil stays. That night, after the animals are fed and the hearth crackles again, he sits by the door mending a harness. Outside, rain patters against the eaves. The children sleep in a heap by the fire. Marjorie hums softly as she spins wool. The tune is old, older than memory. He looks at his hands, cracked, strong, streaked with dirt, and feels a quiet pride. Empires may rise, churches may quarrel, but here, on this patch of English earth, life endures through rhythm, sow, reap, rest, begin again. As he blows out the candle, the wind sighs through the thatch like a benediction. Tomorrow will come, as it always does. Mud, bread, laughter, rain. Chapter 20. Abd al-Rahman ibn Musa, scholar of Timbuktu's Songhai Empire. Dawn seeps across the Sahara in threads of gold. From the mud-brick towers of Timbuktu, the call to prayer rises, thin and musical, carried by the desert wind. Abd al-Rahman ibn Musa opens the shutters of his small study and lets the light touch his manuscripts. The air smells of dust, ink, and sheepskin parchment. At 45, he has spent half his life among the libraries of the Sankore University, copying works of astronomy, law, and poetry that have traveled from Cairo and Cordoba on camelback. He sharpens his reed pen and begins to write a commentary on the stars. Outside, merchants from Gao and Fez haggle over salt and ivory. The bleating of goats drifts through the lanes. The Songhai Empire is strong, its trade routes stretching across Africa's spine. Yet Abidi feels a soft unease, rumors of new ships rounding Africa, of strangers who sail by compass instead of camel caravan. At midday, he steps into the courtyard, where students debate beneath a single acacia tree. Their voices echo off the sun-baked walls, bright as birdsong. Knowledge, he tells them, is a well. The thirsty come and go, but but the water remains. When night falls, he climbs to the roof. The desert cools quickly, the sand glitters with starlight. He traces the constellations with his finger. The same patterns the scholars of Alexandria once mapped. The same sky the caravans still follow. The world beyond may change, but the heavens, for now, are steady. He closes his eyes and whispers a verse of thanks. The ink of the scholar is the perfume of time. Chapter 21. Rafi bin Iskandar, trader of Malacca, Southeast Asia. The tide is high, the harbor alive. Junks, dhows, and slender Malay praus crowd the straits, their sails striped in red and indigo. Malacca in 1500 is a mosaic of voices, Persian, Tamil, Javanese, Arab, Chinese, all speaking the single language of trade. Rafi bin Iskandar steps from his warehouse, the smell of cloves clinging to his robe. He inherited the spice business from his father, who once followed the monsoon winds to Aden and Calicut. He knows the sea's moods the way a scholar knows scripture. Today the market buzzes with tension. Portuguese envoys have arrived, offering iron cannon and demanding tribute. The Sultan debates whether to trust them. Rafi feels both curiosity and dread. These men sail from the far edge of the world, yet they covet the same handful of spice that seasons his rice. He spends the day counting sacks of pepper, inspecting porcelain from China, weighing nutmeg as carefully as gold. In the afternoon he pauses for prayer at the mosque near the water's edge. The air smells of salt and incense. Fishermen chant softly in rhythm with the waves. When the sun sinks, ships turn westward, following the path of light that bleeds across the strait. Rafi stands on the pier, watching until they vanish. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the same sea touches Cairo, Lisbon, Zanzibar. The world, he murmurs, is a single wave. Chapter 22. Zofia Nowak, icon painter of Krakow, Poland, Lithuania. Snow drifts against the windows of a narrow attic in Krakow. The scent of linseed oil and wood smoke fills the room. Zofia Nowak bends over a small wooden panel, grinding vermilion pigment in a mortar. She is 30, daughter of a carpenter, trained by a monk who taught her to paint saints so their eyes may breathe. Outside, church bells toll. The city glows with candlelight reflected on snow. Her newest commission is an icon of the Virgin for a chapel near the river. As she paints, she whispers prayers between strokes, her brush moving slow and sure. Each line of gold leaf catches the light, each fold of blue robe shaped with devotion. But beneath her calm, the world trembles. Travelers bring tales from the south, Turks at the gates of Europe, reformers arguing against Rome, plague in the ports. She paints faster, as if her art could hold the chaos still. By nightfall, the figure on the panel gazes back at her, gentle, weary, alive. Zofia leans close and touches the halo edge. "If you hear me," she whispers, "keep us safe from the noise beyond the snow." Outside, the wind rises, the candle gutters, and in that fragile light, the saint seems almost to nod. Chapter 23. Wabun, storyteller of the Great Lakes, North America. The fire crackles inside the longhouse. Sparks climb toward the smoke hole and vanish into the night. Wabun sits cross-legged before the children, a carved stick in his hand. Its tip glows red from the flame. Beyond the walls, winter presses hard against the Great Lakes. Snow muffles the forest. The ice groans like an old drum. Tonight he tells the story of the Sky Woman, the first mother who fell through the clouds and made the earth upon a turtle's back. The children's eyes shine, reflecting both fire and stars. He is a man of 50 summers, his hair streaked with white. He has seen the world shrink in strange ways, villages abandoning the old mound cities, trade shifting as new paths open to the south. He has heard from distant tribes of pale-skinned strangers moving along the coasts, bringing bright metal and sickness alike. Still he speaks softly, letting his voice rise and fall like wind through pine. Remember, he tells them, the stories are our bones. As long as you speak them, we remain whole. When the tale ends, the children sleep beside the dying fire. Waban steps outside into the frozen night. The aurora shivers across the sky, green and silent. He breathes deep, the air sharp with snow and pine resin. The world is waking, he whispers to the stars. But we are still dreaming. Chapter 24. L of the Northern Sky. Sami reindeer herder, Arctic Circle. The horizon glows with pale fire. The long night has begun. El wraps her fur cloak tight and calls to the reindeer. Their bells answer in soft music. The herd moves slowly across the tundra, hooves crunching over crusted snow. She is 27, born in a world of silence and wind. Her people follow the migration routes between the forests and the sea, living by the rhythm of the animals and the turning light. The year 1500 means nothing here. Calendars melt in the aurora. She guides the sled across a frozen river, breath freezing in the air. In the distance, the mountains glow faintly pink, lit by a sun that never fully rises. When she stops to rest, she hums an old joik, a song of belonging, half melody, half memory. That night she builds her tent of hides and snow. The fire crackles, the dogs curl beside her. She opens a pouch of dried berries and offers a few to the flame, a gift to the spirits of cold and wind. Outside, the sky unfurls ribbons of green and violet, dancing silently over the endless white. Elle steps out and raises her face to it. We are small, she whispers, but the light knows our names. She closes her eyes, feeling the hum of the earth beneath the ice, the pulse of every creature still awake. Far to the south, ships cross oceans, cities rise, empires trade and fall. Up here, only the wind moves, and the world turns gently beneath it. Chapter 25. Farhad the Weaver of Tabriz, Persia. The first light over Tabriz filters through the lattice windows of Farhad's workshop, painting threads of gold across his loom. The city smells of dye and bread, pomegranate, indigo, rose. Outside, the bazaar hums with early traders calling greetings in Persian, Turkish, Armenian, and Arabic. Farhad is 32, a master of silk weaving. His fingers move without thought, knot after knot, pattern after pattern, the rhythm older than speech. He learned from his mother, who said that each carpet holds a prayer. We weave the world so it will not unravel. In these years, Persia lies in uneasy balance. The old Turkmen dynasties fade. The Safavids rise from the north, promising a new order. Tabriz feels the tremor of change in every market whisper. Farhad's patrons, merchants, scholars, soldiers, argue softly about the coming Shah, about faith and power. He listens, but says little. His own faith is in color. As he works, he dips wool into vats of dye, madder for red, walnut for brown, saffron for gold. When the cloth emerges, steaming and luminous, he smiles. This is his scripture. At midday, his apprentice brings tea. Master, the boy says, what pattern today? Farhad traces the air with his finger. Mountains for patience, rivers for mercy, a border for hope. The afternoon sun slants through the door. The threads glow like flame. In the corner, a half-finished carpet shows a rising sun, an omen, though he does not know for what. When evening comes, he rolls the loom cover down and steps outside. The streets hum with the scent of spice and rain. From the citadel, drums echo, the call of a new ruler's banner unfurling. Farhad looks up at the darkening sky. Empires come and go, he murmurs, but a carpet stays beneath every footstep. Then he walks home through the twilight, the city of silk breathing around him. Chapter 26. Lucia di Conti, Mapmaker's Apprentice, Venice. Mist drapes the lagoon like gauze. Venice wakes in slow ripples of sound, oars dipping, bells tolling, gulls crying above the roofs. In a workshop near the Arsenale, Lucia di Conti grinds ink from soot and oil, her sleeves rolled to the elbow. She is 19, daughter of a shipwright, apprentice to an old cartographer who once sailed with Portuguese pilots. The smell of salt and parchment fills the room. On the table lies a half-finished world, continents uncertain, edges curling where the ink bled. Lucia bends close, steadying her hand as she draws a new coastline whispered by returning sailors, strange forests, red-skinned people, birds brighter than jewels. Only rumor, her master grumbles, peering through a magnifying glass. But rumor makes maps before truth does. Outside, Venice thrives on rumor. Merchants shout prices for pepper and glass. Diplomats carry letters from kings. The sea glitters with galleys bound for Alexandria and Lisbon alike. Lucia longs to see beyond the horizon her pen invents. At noon she climbs to the balcony for air. The domes of San Marco shine through fog. She watches a procession of ships glide down the Grand Canal, their sails striped crimson and white. Each mast, she thinks, is a finger pointing toward the unknown. Back at the table, she traces a compass rose, its points sharp as stars. Her master dozes. She adds one small mark of her own, a tiny island in an empty sea, unnamed. A secret dream. Perhaps no ship will ever find it. Perhaps that is its purpose. When night falls, she cleans her brushes, dips her hands in the basin, and watches the black water swirl away. From the docks comes a faint chorus of sailors' songs, voices of men who trust the wind more than the land. Lucia closes the shutters and lights a single candle. Its flame flickers across the unfinished map, making the oceans move. She smiles, whispering, "The world is wider every time we draw it." Outside, the tide rises, carrying tomorrow's ships toward her imagined shores. Chapter 27. Yari of Borican, Puerto Rico, West Indies. The morning tide creeps over the white sand of Borican, the island the strangers call San Juan. Palm shadows stretch across the beach. Parrots cry in the trees. Yari, a youth of 15 summers, follows his father to the canoes drawn high above the surf. They belong to the Taino people, fishers and farmers of cassava and maize. Their world is green and endless, a lattice of rivers, coral bays, and villages joined by paths of red earth. Yari's hair smells of salt and smoke. His heart beats to the rhythm of oars. He helps mend nets while elders chant to the sea spirit Atabi, asking for calm waters. Far out, a dark line blemishes the horizon. "Clouds?" he asks. His father squints, silent. The shape grows, 3 tall masts, white as bone. By noon, the ships drift close enough that their sails blot the sun. Men in shining skins shout in strange tones. Some of Yari's people run to the forest, others watch, rooted by awe. He feels both. That night the strangers land. They offer beads and knives that catch the firelight. The cacique greets them with food and song, but their eyes move constantly to the soil, the trees, the women. Yari senses a hunger he cannot name. Later, lying in his hammock, he hears drums from the next village. A warning rhythm. His father whispers, "The sea gives new stories, and not all are good." At dawn the ships are gone again, but footprints scar the sand. Yari presses his palm into one, larger than any man's he knows, and the sea begins to erase it, grain by grain. He tells himself the island will heal, that the spirits of forest and waves will guard them. Yet, in his dreams that night, the horizon stays full of sails. Chapter 28. Domingos Nzinga, envoy of the Congo Kingdom, Central Africa. The sun stands high over Mbanza, Congo, gleaming on copper roofs and red earth. Drums announce visitors from the coast. Courtiers hurry to the palace of King Afonso I. Domingos Nzinga, royal interpreter and envoy, waits in the courtyard, robes bright with woven shell patterns. He was baptized years ago by Portuguese priests, yet his heart still beats to the songs of his ancestors. Today, he must balance both worlds. The emissaries arrive, men in metal shirts, carrying books and muskets. Their captain bows stiffly, presenting gifts, a silver crucifix, a mirror, bolts of linen. The king receives them beneath a carved ivory canopy. Domingos translates every word, weighing each like gold. They speak of friendship, of trade, of God. Beneath the words runs another current. Guns for slaves, faith for power. Domingos feels the tension like a blade between his ribs. After the audience, he walks to the edge of the plateau, where the wind smells of rain and river. Children chase butterflies through cassava fields. Women sing as they grind grain. The land seems eternal, yet the ocean horizon glitters with new danger. That evening, he sits by a lamplight, writing a letter in careful Latin for the Portuguese governor. Each stroke of ink feels like a thread tightening around his homeland. May the Congo thrive in both spirit and peace, he writes, though he fears the two will soon diverge. When he seals the parchment, he lifts his eyes to the stars, the same constellations the sailors steer by. If we share the sky, he murmurs, why do our hearts travel such different roads? Chapter 29. Asha Devi, musician of Agra, northern India. Morning drapes itself in pale mist over the Yamuna River. The sandstone walls of Agra glow rose gold beneath the rising sun. From the inner courtyard of a noble house comes the sound of a sitar, soft, deliberate notes winding through the still air. Asha Devi sits cross-legged on a woven mat, her fingers poised above the strings. At 17, she is one of the household musicians, daughter of a court singer who once performed before the sultans of Delhi. The year is 1500. The Lodi dynasty rules the north, unaware that the seeds of a new empire already stir in the west. Asha begins her morning raga, a melody meant to greet the dawn. The notes bloom and fade like light across water. She feels the vibration in her fingertips, in her chest, in the slow turn of the river beyond the walls. Her teacher, Ustad Rahim, listens from the veranda, his beard silver, his eyes half closed. Each note, he says softly, must begin where the heart ends. Asha nods. She knows that music is both devotion and discipline, a bridge between human breath and divine silence. Her voice joins the strings, low, steady, full of longing. The words are ancient Sanskrit, older than the city itself. When the lesson ends, she walks to the courtyard well. Servants draw water. Birds flutter among the neem trees. Somewhere across the river, masons hammer at the foundations of a new mosque. The city hums with change, languages mixing, faiths intertwining, the air heavy with promise. In the afternoon, she joins her mother at the women's quarters. They embroider silk while talking softly of rumor, travelers from Kabul bringing tales of a fierce young prince named Babu, claiming descent from Timur. Asha listens, curious but detached. The world beyond these walls feels far away, yet, in some corner of her soul, she senses the music of destiny gathering its rhythm. As evening falls, she returns to her instrument. The sky burns orange, then deepens to violet. She plays another raga, one for twilight, for parting. Her teacher sits again beside her, silent. When the final note fades, Rahim murmurs, "You play as if the world will end tonight." She smiles. "Perhaps it will, Ustad, but if it does, let it end in tune." Later, lying beneath the open lattice, she listens to the faint echo of her own song, carried by the wind across the river. Somewhere, she imagines, a stranger will hear it and not know why their heart aches. Chapter 30. Nayan, guardian of the river, southern Andes, Mapuche lands. The river glides through the forest like polished obsidian. Nayan, a Mapuche woman of 30 years, kneels at its edge, washing a bundle of woven cloth. The water is so clear she can see her reflection. Dark eyes, high cheekbones, strands of black hair streaked with gray. It is early spring in the southern Andes. The snow still clings to the peaks, but the valley hums with life. Condors circling overhead, fox tracks in the mud, the whisper of bamboo in the wind. Her people have lived here for generations, between the mountains and the sea. The year 1500 is only another turning of the moon to them. She looks upstream, where the young men have gone to fish, and downstream, where elders gather herbs. The world feels whole, but the shaman's dreams have grown restless. Visions of fire ships crossing the sea. They will come, the shaman had said, and the land will have to remember its own strength. Nayan rises, wrings the cloth, and hangs it to dry on a branch. She carries her basket through the trees to the village, round houses of thatch, smoke curling into the sky. Children chase one another with sticks, dogs bark lazily. Life flows like the river itself, simple, circular, alive. At sunset, the community gathers around the fire. The chief speaks of hunting, of planting, of balance. Then he nods to Nayan. She steps forward and tells the story of Ngwenakan, the spirit who shaped the valleys with his hands. Her voice is low, rhythmic, filled with the cadence of wind and flame. The children lean closer. When she finishes, an old woman adds more wood to the fire. Sparks rise, drifting toward the stars. "Our words," Nayan says, "are what keep the river clear." That night, she cannot sleep. She walks to the water's edge, the moon trembling on its surface. The forest is silent except for the heartbeat of frogs. She kneels again and places her palm in the current. "If the strangers come," she whispers, "let the river remember us." The water moves on, carrying her reflection into the dark. Chapter 33. The Watcher. Before the lamps are lit, and after the last ones fade, there is an hour with no name. It does not belong to the calendar or the clock. It slides between breaths and rises from the seams of silence, when streets go still, hearths glow to embers, and the slow animal of the earth turns beneath a quilt of cloud. In that hour I walk. You would not notice me if you saw me. I have borrowed 1,000 appearances, a shadow at the corner of a courtyard, the glimmer of a river seen through reeds, the hush that settles after a bell. I am not a god. I am less and more. Only the patience of time given eyes. When the year called 1500 rolls over like a polished stone in the palm of history, I step from no place in particular and begin my circuit. In Beijing, a scholar named Li Wei bends over a brush. His candle is nearly gone, and the ink has the color of midnight. He writes characters that teach him to stand upright on the inside. He believes his words, like seeds, may take root in an unseen season. I pass my sleeve over the paper and feel the strokes still warm. Outside the forbidden city, Frost begins to trace the bridge rails. A watchman clears his throat and moves on, and so do I. The Bosporus carries moonlight like a secret. Amina in Istanbul sleeps with the soft ache that follows a day of weaving. Her loom rests, wrapped in cloth, the design half-born and waiting. The tulips she set into silk are closed now, as real tulips will be by dawn. I brush the threads with the back of my hand and hear the echo of a poet. What is woven remains even when the weaver vanishes. The city keeps breathing. A night fisherman sings to himself and pulls in a net bright with scales like coins. Far inland in Benin, the forge stones are cool. Idawu's plaque stands propped against a wall, the warrior's bronze gaze unsleeping. Behind that gaze rests a memory of hands, of wax that melted away, of fire that had its say and then made peace. If I lean close, I can smell the copper's ghost of heat. In centuries no one here imagines. Men will whisper to these faces through glass and say they came from a world that forgot itself and then remembered. Tonight the plaques keep their counsel and shine. The Andes are a coal of wind. Kuzi, barefoot Chasqui, runner of messages and miles, dreams with his mouth slightly open, ribs rising like the flanks of a good horse. His quipu pouch rests beside him, knots looped like constellations we tied to ourselves and then learned to read. A fox pads past the tambo, silent, and the stars bloom with an indifference that is also tenderness. I sit with him until his breath deepens, and a new runner's footsteps touch the far path. The empire's heartbeat, quick and steady, moves onward across the stone. In Florence, the pigment bowls sleep. Matteo holds a brush even in his dreams, painting the moment when blue learns to forgive the darkness around it. He has copied a hand, a lip, the fold of a robe more times than he can count, and still each repetition brings him closer to something that cannot be repeated. The Arno turns in its bed. Somewhere a door latches. Somewhere an old man climbs the stairs with a guttering lamp and a loaf wrapped in cloth. I set a fingertip to a patch of ultramarine and leave no mark, though the color quivers as if it recognizes my name. On the lake, where the city Tenochtitlan glitters by day, Citlali dreams of feathers the color of rivers. She lies curled like a comma in the sentence of a world that believes the sun must be paid for in blood so it will rise again. Her brother's breath, a steady tide, answers the lake's small lappings at the pilings. I stand at the edge of the causeway and look east. Clouds gather there in a shape that is not cloud. The future has a keel and a hunger. The night keeps its balance a little longer. Mombasa exhales the perfume of clove and wet rope. Asha has inked a poem in the margin of trade accounts where no accountant would ever think to look. A line about tide and stars, about debt and mercy. The words are new and weightless and will outlast stones. Beside her ledger a shell gleams, spiraled like the truth, simple, then deeper still. I listen to the dhow masts knock lightly and turn toward the sea. Through bamboo and mist in Kai, Hiroshi cleans a blade that will be perfectly honest when it speaks. He remembers a monk's sentence, all things return to silence, and has not yet decided if that is consolation or warning. I know the answer and do not tell him, the knowing is his to find. His mare stamps, the pine needles hold their breath. The night leans down as if to take instruction. Out on the Atlantic, Duarte touches the rail of the São Jorge and forgives the ocean for being large. I have walked on water before. It is nothing like the stories say. It is not a miracle, it is a question. How much of your weight can you give away and still remain yourself? His ship answers with a timbered groan. On the beach in Brazil, Arani watches a cross rise like a dark flower and whispers a prayer to the horizon that loved her before any stranger did. Now the bells of Cairo are candle flames of copper above the alleys. Fatima lays her reed pen aside and rubs a wrist stiff from kindness. In the clay jar at her elbow the mint is fresh and sharp. On the shelf the jars hold powders for fever, for grief, for beginnings and endings of all sizes. She believes the sky and the body rhyme with each other. I believe it too. She banks the brazier, and the room grows the kind of warm that tells a story about bread. The steppe answers with wolves. Oyun steps out of her gur and names the stars she knows, and the unnamed ones too, the small lights we keep in our mouths for children to inherit. Her herd breathes white in the cold. The old man inside remembers how the world looked from a saddle's height when it belonged to hooves and rumor. They will move at dawn. The grass, elegant and forgiving, has already agreed. Vijayanagara gleams like a bowl of embers overturned on the earth. Rajan has dust in every crease of his hands, grace in every cut. He believes a figure is sleeping inside stone, and that he knows the secret knock. The river shrugs and carries secrets toward an ocean that has heard them all. I run a palm across the lotus he carved, and feel the soft gravity of things that outlast the names we give them. In Bergen, Ingrid holds vigil with the rain. She counts the counts she will not speak aloud until the boat returns, the prayers to the saint, to the old sea wife who keeps a net for the lost, to the wind that is nobody's business. The door opens, the room smells of brine and laughter. Two lives reseat themselves in their rightful bones. I stand at the threshold and make no sound so as not to break the miracle's shell. On a roof in Samarkand, Yahya folds his astrolabe like a pupil closing. He has stolen angles from 7 bright dignitaries and filled a book with their obedience. The heavens are perfect, but our eyes are not. He smiles when he writes it because he loves human error. It is the hinge that lets truth swing. In Zaragua, Anacaona writes a poem and hides it under a goddess, and the goddess takes it. The drums say yes, then no, then yes again, echoing the law by which anything worthy lives. On the Kent Lane, Thomas sets down his mended leather and listens to rain explain the entire world in one syllable repeated until it is wisdom. He thinks of wheat as a kind of prayer that rises from the soil with a green word. He is not wrong. Timbuktu remembers the taste of ink. Abdul Rahman fingers a page as if it were skin, careful, grateful, aware of the blood that fed it, and thanks the desert for its library of horizons. In Malacca, Rafi says the ocean is a single wave. He is correct, but only if you have the patience to wait for it to come back as rain. Krakow holds its breath in snow. Zofia lays gold so thin that light can wear it to a festival. She paints a face that will keep looking at anyone who looks at it, which is one way to survive an age. In the longhouse by the Great Lakes, Waban tells children they are made of stories. The fire approves. The aurora outside nods like a wise animal that does not need a name. Elle watches that same aurora and sings, not with her mouth, but with her ribs. The reindeer dream of lichen. The dogs whimper when the night remembers foxes. She feeds the spirits of cold and wind a few berries, a small red grammar for gratitude, and the circle widens. Farhad wakes and knots mercy and patience into wool until they learn to hold hands. Lucia draws a coastline that is rumor and in so doing makes it truer than before. Yari presses his palm into a footprint. The sea is already forgiving. Domingo signs a letter in a careful alphabet that is busily reinventing allegiance. Asha Devi summons dawn with a raga and tucks twilight beneath its wing. Nayan touches a river and asks it to remember her voice when voices grow loud. They are all asleep again by the time I have named them. They are all awake again by the time I have moved on. You ask, though perhaps you do not know you ask, what I have learned from the long soft circumference of this year. I have learned that the world is stitched from small continuities, a cup refilled, a tool hung where the hand will find it tomorrow, a story repeated until it becomes true because kindness made it so. I have learned that empires are weather, and people are climate, and climate is patient. I have learned that a loom and a press and a chisel and a runner's lungs are all instruments of the same music. And I have learned this: the sky above the forbidden city and the sky above Borican are the same page. Tenochtitlan and Florence turn under a single sentence of stars. The year we call 1500 is not a wall but a window, not a line but a lake. Step in, and you will find the temperature of being human has not changed much at all. The hour with no name begins to thin. Roosters in 3 languages clear their throats. A pot is lifted, a hinge sighs, a child cries and is answered. The first cart of the day finds the angle of a rut and complains. I have one last task before I fade to where I wait for the next unwritten hour. I go to the edge of a shore whose name you may choose. I remove my shoes, old habit, and stand with my feet at the lip of foam. Then I speak the names I have gathered, not loudly but with the authority of attention, and offer them back to the water. The water accepts them, as it accepts everything, and does what water does with a gift, carries it everywhere. If you wake tonight and feel for no reason that you are less alone than the room suggests, it may be because a fragment of Liwei's patience, or Amina's tulip, Idawu's bronze, or Kuzi's breath has found you. It may be that Mateo's blue has cooled your pulse, or Sitlali's feathers rustled at the corner of your dream. Perhaps Asha's ledger-margin poem leaned against your window like a leaf. Perhaps you have discovered the answer to the monk's sentence about silence. It is not the opposite of sound. It is the space where meaning arranges itself. The lamps go out, the lamps come on. The sea keeps tally in its smooth, wet script. I put on my borrowed shadow and fold myself away. The world turns, and the turning is a lullaby. And somewhere between dusk and dawn, the planet sleeps. The rivers rest, the fires dim, the voices fade into the hush before another sunrise. One day, one world, forever caught in that single moment when everything was still possible. The year is 1500. A single rotation of the earth binds them all, each heartbeat folded inside the same turning sphere. None of them knows the shape of the century to come, the sails that will bring empires together and tear them apart, the presses that will multiply words faster than thought, the plagues and revelations, the quiet miracles of endurance. For this one day, they are simply alive, breathing, hoping, dreaming beneath the same constellations. The light that leaves the stars above them will travel for centuries before reaching our eyes. When we look up tonight, we see what they saw. The sky has not forgotten. If you are sleeping already, sleep well. If you are listening, may the rest of your night be easy. Subscribe to History for Sleep, and let the next story find you.